Despite oxygen entering the ocean through bacteria and plants, it also enters the water through contact with the atmosphere. This is due to the circular motions of the water particles. Atmospheric oxygen is then forced into the ocean through these motions. As shown, the particles move in these specific patterns while also having a forward net force. This contributes to the movement of ocean waves. The oxygen that enters the water from the atmosphere is then transported throughout different depths of the ocean through currents. These currents are due to the gravitational force. Ocean water has a tendency to want to stay at a flat level, but gravity opposes this because it is unstable. When water is built up in some areas, the crests of the waves, and lacking in others, the troughs of the waves, gravity forces the crests down, causing the troughs to rise. This forces oxygen in the crests downwards to lower depths in the ocean. As this occurs, the water is following the motion of Earth's spin on its axes due to Newton's first law, the law of inertia. Inertia is a body's tendency to resist change in motion. This is responsible for the curved trajectory we see in ocean waves. The physics behind ocean oxygenation is fairly simple, but helps provide life to many organisms.
The oxygen levels in the ocean are crucial to chemical processes. With waters that are already at hypoxic levels, when we see a greater decrease, there is fear for anoxia. The low levels of oxygen in the ocean are the cause of denitrification. With limited oxygen available, bacteria begin to use nitrate for respiration in its place. Through this, we can see a loss of nitrogen in the ocean. As the nitrates are being used up and there is little oxygen available, the bacteria begin to use chemical changes of microbial sulfate reduction as an energy source. Through this, the bacteria produce hydrogen sulfide. With these processes, the oxygen water tends to lean towards euxinia. Hydrogen sulfide is toxic to plants and can destroy their growth patterns. A decrease in plants will further lower the levels of oxygen in the ocean. The relationship between the oxygen available and the oxygen demand is very important as it clearly shows how dynamic our oceans are. This relationship is extremely sensitive to any changes in ocean physics or geochemistry. Thankfully, there are no places on Earth that are permanently euxinic, but we make efforts to replenish ocean oxygen in an attempt to limit the area of hypoxia and anoxia.
What is hypoxia and how does it happen? Hypoxia is the condition where the body's tissue and muscle are deprived of oxygen. There are many factors that cause hypoxia in our water, yet nutrient pollution is the biggest factor. This pollution comes from different sources such as the weathering of rocks and soil, yet it is predominantly coming from areas where coastal living is increasing. This increase of fertilizer running off into our oceans increases the production and growth of algae. This overgrowth then causes an imbalance in the marine ecosystem. This pollution is a human-caused problem and it will only increase the levels of hypoxia in our waters if nothing is done to prevent it. The temperature and salinity of an area also affect the oxygen levels when it's not at its optimum. The effects of hypoxia in ocean ecosystems. Although there are hypoxia-tolerant species, this loss of oxygen can result in the loss of the majority of marine life which are hypoxia-sensitive. This possible loss to the majority of marine life can lead to an even bigger shift in an ecosystem. Dead zones, which is another term for hypoxia, are areas where the death of species are alarmingly high, or where most of the remaining species leave that area. These dead zones are located close to coastal areas, which correspond to these regions being a predominant factor in areas that have low oxygen levels. These dead zones and loss of oxygen will have serious effects on our oceans as they decrease the biodiversity of an area and alter the balance that was once there.
Contrary to freshwater fish, saltwater organisms possess a higher tolerance for lower dissolved oxygen levels. This is because saltwater on average has a lower 100% air saturation than its fresh counterparts, with saltwater's dissolved oxygen content being about 20% lower. This, however, is not to say that saltwater organisms can live without any dissolved oxygen at all. The standard concentration for ultimate fish health is 5 mg per liter, and most fish species become afflicted when this drops to 2 to 4 mg per liter. Once these levels drop even lower, expect death to occur. A study conducted in 2018 concluded that in the past 50 years, areas in the ocean with 0% oxygen increased to be 4 times more than before. Animals living in said zones will subsequently succumb to suffocation and die. The absence of dissolved oxygen content in water is one of, if not the most common factors of fish kills, which are when a large number of fish die off at once. Not only will this of course affect the fish population, but also the wellness of the birds and other animals who feed on those fish as well. Humans who rely on said fish and birds as a means of harvest will then also feel the effects of low dissolved oxygen content.